So yesterday we discussed invoice creation and revenue scheduling, etc. Right? And documents sequence, receipt creation, how the revenue scheduling works in invoicing rules, how accounting entry will be generated, how we can create credit memo, and what is the accounting for credit memo. So some more scenario we'll discuss regarding invoice creation. Let me show you one invoice. Let me navigate to AP. Sorry, air billing. Manage invoice. We created some invoice yesterday and we can see. Let us review the accounting again. Okay. So whenever we create a invoice, accounting will be receivable account debit and revenue will be credit. This is our usual entry. But if there is some scenario like we discussed revenue scheduling, right? How it works across period. But customer okay. What customer wants, like our organization business wants that we don't want to recognize revenue till certain event happens. That means if some revenue contingency happens, then only we can recognize the revenue. Like when you, as usual, when you create an invoice, receivable to revenue account will be generated, right? But customer wants like whenever the customer is paying, because sometimes their customers creditworthiness and doubtful customers, and our business wants that once the customer make the actual payments for the invoice, then only we can recognize the revenue. Till then, it should revenue recognition should be deferred. It should be on hold. Okay, that means we created one invoice 1000 ABC customer, but we created the invoice. The customer has not paid against that invoice. The payment has not been completed. So in that case, my receivable account will be debit 1000. Revenue account should not be credit. So it should go to some deferred revenue account or unearned revenue account. Slightly different scenario. In this case, we created the invoice. Customer payment has not been done. That's why the revenue recognition will wait for the actual customer payment. Once the customer has paid, then we'll get the entry. Unearned revenue account to revenue account. So there can be multiple contingency, right? So how can we achieve this? Now in this case, usually normal scenario, right? So we'll build that other scenario based on revenue contingency. How can we do that? So we have to do some setups that is called revenue contingency setup. Setup and maintenance. Go to manage revenue contingency. So manage revenue contingency. I created one contingency called US revenue contingency. So whenever you are creating one contingency, you can see my revenue contingency, the event, the removal event is payment. That means customer payment. If you want to create one like this, you have to create. My reference data is coming. For example, US to revenue contingency. That means the revenue will not be recognized immediately. It will be on contingency till certain events fulfilled for this customer. So my revenue contingency will start from April 1st. That is important. Contingency removal event. Contingency means it will go to some unearned revenue account, as I mentioned. But how it will be removed? What is the removal event? That is called event-based revenue recognition. So what are the events? There are payment, proof of delivery. If you are creating order, sales order, if we have delivered to the customer and we have proof of delivery, in that case, once the proof of delivery is submitted, then the revenue will be recognized. Contingency will be removed. Or invoicing, milestone billing. Milestone billing means partly in certain percentage of invoice. A progress billing, which is called, like from one order, we can create multiple invoices. Milestone billing. If order is booked, you will book some invoice. If order is shipped, or certain lines is shipped or delivered, then we'll create another invoice. So like that, we have progress billing concept. In that case also, if how you can, we are going to what percentage you want to recognize. So if you have created some contingency and time limit or date limit, if the date is expires or contingency will expire, our revenue will be recognized. So I've given payment as the revenue removal event. That means once the customer will make the payment, we'll recognize the revenue. Let us see. What is the next step? You have to create one rule. Revenue contingency assignment rule. That means once you created the contingency, you have to align that contingency to certain transaction types or any other attributes which are linked to invoice, so that the contingency will be applicable. I created one that is US revenue contingency rules. What is the rules I have given? Like this contingency will be applied whenever I'll create a transaction with this particular transaction type. And this transaction type name is invoice. Okay. If you want to create another one, okay, here you can come here and revenue continue. What is the contingency name? I created whatever contingency that I have to align here. Once I created the rule, I have to give the parameters on which condition this contingency will be applied as well as removed. Removal event I have given in my contingency. Now, this rule will be applied in which condition, on which parameter. So I have lot of attributes which are available or data source, like it might build to side or business unit. But I want to memo lines. If you are using standard memo lines, so if I use this memo line, then this contingency will be applied like that. In this case, I will create because I'm using transaction type, right? Transaction type. So what is my in which there are multiple transaction type. I have 100 transaction type. So it should not applicable for all the transaction type. For specific transaction type, which I have included here. For example, invoice. So it should apply. Okay. Or any other invoice, you can give any like let me give some other transaction type. Invoice nonsense. Okay. Submit. Okay. The first one I created with invoice. So transaction type is invoice, then my contingency rule will be applied. Second one I created with some other invoice non-sell transaction type. So now let us create one invoice and we can review the transaction accounting.
Sir, here you mentioned contingency removal as a payment, right? Is it a partial or a full payment should be done?
Full payment.
So in case of partial, it won't apply, right?
Partial will not apply.
Okay, sir.
Srini, could you please explain the scenario again? I'm sorry, I'm lost on that. So you're saying that when the customer did not receive the payment, is that what it is?
Not received. Customer has made the payment because we are creating AR invoice, right? So in case of AR invoice, certain organization, they will not outrightly, they will recognize the revenue. So that event based, they will follow the event based revenue recognition.
So you're saying that when the customer paid and we did not send them an invoice for that?
No. We have sent the invoice to customer, but customer has not made the payment yet.
Okay. So for that, we, you mean he exceeded the payment terms or?
No. Not payment term, within payment term. Within payment term or exceed payment term, whatever. But in our, as per our revenue policy, we are not going to recognize the revenue till the customer make the payment. This one scenario. This is my scenario. There can be other criteria also, but in this scenario, like I have created invoice, I have shipped the material to customer, and I created the invoice here. I build the invoice, sent to the customer, but customer has not the payment. Usually what happens once we create the invoice, our entry will be receivable to revenue. So once the entry will hit the revenue account, that means our revenue is recognized. It will be on balance sheet, right? Sorry, your
Correct.
profit and loss account as
Correct.
a revenue. But in this case, I have not moving that amount to revenue account. So I have a deferred revenue account that is called
Okay.
unearned revenue account
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it.
because customer has not paid.
Okay. Okay. So you want to, until the customer pays, you don't want to recognize it as a revenue.
Revenue,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Srini?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry, you were silent, so I was just wondering if you were on mute or something. So then here you're saying that the contingency rule is transaction type is equal to invoice, right?
Invoice, yeah.
So, but we already created the invoice and we sent it to the customer, right? I'm sorry, I'm asking you so many questions. I'm just a little
Yeah. No,
confused,
that's not
confused about this scenario. So
Yeah.
you're saying we already send the invoice to the customer, but we just still
No, before sending, we have to set up this rules. Okay. Once you create the invoice, we have to, before that, we have to set up the rule because if it is applicable for your organization, it's your requirement, you have to do the setup accordingly. So I created this invoice before creating this contingency, right? That's why my revenue recognized immediately, right? You can see here. Where is that revenue? If you view accounting, so it's revenue, receivable to revenue, right? But now I have created the contingency with this transaction type. Now we'll see what is happening.
So you're saying that unrevenue is uninvoiced, right?
No, it is invoiced, but revenue will not recognized. Like yesterday also I discussed revenue scheduling, right? 12 months. Right. That is the similar situation, like invoice will be deferred, revenue will be deferred, but here the case is different. Here it's event-based revenue recognition.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let me create one invoice. Now I'll be using this transaction type, right? Okay. So ABC customer. It can be net 30 days. Let me do it immediate. Okay. So that means once I send the invoice, customer should pay me immediately. Otherwise, I cannot recognize my revenue. $100 I'm taking. Save it. Complete. So now I created the invoice. Let me check the distribution first. See, it's now going to unearned revenue account automatically, right? Revenue is not recognized. Why? Because I have a contingency. How can I check there is a contingency? This is the invoice number. Now my invoice is complete. There is a tab called revenue, right? Here I can check and review what is the contingency. I can see for this invoice, if you navigate to the revenue tab, what are the revenue deferred pending contingency removal? Why? Because this invoice is pending payment now, customer payment. Okay, it's showing contingency detail, revenue contingency, US revenue contingency. So how we can remove this contingency? We cannot remove this manually. We have to satisfy that event, satisfy that conditions. That means what is the condition? The customer should make the payment so that this revenue will be contingency will be removed. So now I'll go and make the payment.
Could you please show us the previous accounting entries for this invoice?
Previous means which one?
The one when you created the invoice. So
Just
your,
now, right?
Yeah, receivables is debit 108.75, and then you're crediting revenue account.
Yeah,
right?
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Here it is, it should be accounting. First entry will be receivable to unearned revenue.
Mm.
In normal case scenario, it is your
Direct revenue account.
direct revenue account, but here it is going to your unearned revenue account. So once as soon as I make the payment, this contingency will be removed and revenue will be recognized. Create revenue, create receipt. ABC Americas. Add open receivables. They get the site also. Search for the outstanding invoice. What is the invoice number? This is the invoice number, right? So let me add. Done. So this invoice I created. Submit and auto apply.
I think there's a 75 cents variance, right? That's right.
Yeah. Oh, it's including tax amount. It is exceeding. That's right. Yeah. So it is giving me recommendation. The same invoice.
Okay.
Or what I can do. Yeah. The 75 is pending. 0.775. Total applied amount, save and close. So now let us see Go to revenue tab again. Still it is not removed. Why? Because still against 0.0575 it's pending. What we can do again, we'll make the payment for 0.75. So I have added that rest amount to submit and auto apply. Total amount is applied. Save and close. Now go to the invoice. Check the invoice is fully applied. Is there any outstanding amount? Transaction activity or balance detail. So balance it's completely applied and we don't have any outstanding amount for this customer. So now we are expecting that this revenue, if you see the accounting or distribution, let's see the distribution. Okay, now this revenue which has been recognized. Earlier we are getting like it was hitting the unearned revenue account, but now it is hitting the revenue account. Why? Because we have satisfied the event and the contingency has been removed. If you go to again
What is satisfying the event? Sorry, I may have missed.
yeah, so you can see here that this removal event, the contingency has been removed. Yeah, so this is a scenario for revenue contingency, like where we cannot recognize the revenue till certain events are satisfied.
Okay.
So that is called contingency, revenue contingency. In usual case, what we do, we recognize the revenue immediately once we create the invoice, right? But in this case, the revenue will be deferred till certain events like customer acceptance. Sometimes we send the material to customer has not accepted, even though customer has received. The customer first they will accept and say that it's okay, then only will recognize the revenue. Or there can be other events like delivery, shipping, or proof of delivery, or customer payment. Based on that events, we have to wait till that event is satisfied. Then we have to remove the contingency and revenue will be recognized. So this in some organization they use this event-based recognition, revenue recognition. Yesterday I discussed this like revenue scheduling, right? How revenue will be recognized across periods. So this is another. This is called event-based revenue recognition,
Okay.
where where revenue will be deferred based
I'll
on
go
some
through your
contingent.
video training.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't want to
okay.
waste it. Thank you.
Second scenario is we will discuss SLA. So now we discuss that revenue contingency. We'll we'll discuss one scenario on SLA, how this accounting happens, right?